if technology permits, those people that wanted to hear Matt Ray's keyboard, the clicky sounds of his keyboard, we have both Matt Ray live, and we have Matt Ray has pre-recorded some version of it that maybe we'll play. So if you stay to the very end, you may be lucky enough to hear Matt Ray's official new keyboard, as well as a bonus, he also included some sounds of the trackball. So, I mean, if that is not going to keep the views 100%, I don't know what else I can offer off the top. So,
the S in ASMR stands for sicko.
I was going to say the people, meaning one person in Slack, asked for it. So we're going to try to provide it. If I don't know, we'll see if it works. But there's several obstacles of like, can we get the sound? Will it actually work? And things like that.
The keyboard's not that loud. That was the problem.
I don't know.
The magic of editing.
Stay to the end. I won't reveal my thoughts on the keyboard till the very, very end. So, so there you have it. That's the reason to stay all the way to the end of this episode.
I got a preview of the sound, and I agree with Brandon. You're going to want to stay till the end to hear it. As with any keyboard sound, what I was wondering as I was listening to it was, I wonder what he's typing.
Yeah, we'll get to that too. That's another question. We'll see what words or not words maybe he was using.
It was words.
Oh.
it was words. All right,
Cote. Without further ado, feel free to kick us off.
All right. I had something in mind, but then okay. I don't know if this is very exciting, but whatever.
Did you update the Slack and all that?
Oh no, hold on. Oh,
okay.
Hold on. Continue.
Y'all have a hard stop or anything?
We don't. I don't.
Not for an hour and a half, but I'd like to
take
a shower. Yeah.
But there needs to be a word for that, where it's not as we would say a hard stop, but it's like a preferred stop.
A quality of life stop.
Yeah.
Nobody's got time for that.
Quality of life stop. All right.
Okay, I've now updated the Slack, so those that are interested, they can get in here.
All right. As happens frequently, I have a parenting question here, and I'm going to cross it with a little bit of like Netherlands life here. So I was biking with the kids to school today, which is nice. One of the great achievements, I think, I wouldn't say of parenting, but of their life that has occurred, is they don't really complain about biking to school in cold, pissing rain. They just sort of do it. So, they really, like my grandfather, who ate a fried egg sandwich for lunch every day on a dirt farm and went to school uphill both ways, would be proud, which is nice. I think my other grandfather definitely didn't go to school uphill both ways. I think someone might have driven him.
Okay.
One of those situations.
That's going to go one of two ways. It's like,
yeah.
He was a slave labor.
He got stuck in the gully between two hills. Is a gully? Is that what a gully is?
Sure.
I don't know. Anyhow, we're biking to school, and I hear that sound that a bike makes when there's something rubbing against the wheel, kind of rhythmically. And so I have my son Cormac pull aside, and his fender is just bent, and so I just pull the fender up, and then it's fine. But it got me thinking, like, I also need to fix the brake on my daughter Alejandra's bike. She has pedal brakes, so it's just it's got multiple braking systems that are redundant, so she's fine, right? Her handle brake needs to be fixed. And I've had my bike the whole time I've lived here, 5.5 years, and it's like dirty because I don't clean things, I guess. But it's in pretty good shape. I still have the same tires, which I need to replace. But I was looking at my kids' bikes, and I was like, so how do I calibrate? What's the function running in my head about taking care of my kids' bikes? Because like they work, but they're kind of like junky. My daughter's bike is in good shape, but
are they starting to outgrow them?
They're not outgrowing them, but they don't like take care of their bikes. Like,
sure,
my son would have biked to school with the fender like rubbing up against the wheel the whole time, and he would basically have kept it that way until his wheel rubbed away, right? Like it just wouldn't occur to him. So like, should I be going in there and like doing this maintenance to make sure they have the best, most pristine bike? Or is it just like, do you just let the kids do what they're going to do because they're individuals? Now, the bike is just one thing.
Oh,
but there's
yeah,
other things
absolutely.
in life that this applies to, whether it's keyboards or trackballs or bikes. Like how do you figure out when to intervene and what to intervene about, and to what degree?
I think you have to start making the work visible to them. So as a parent, this is my not particularly hot take, but you have to be responsible for making sure like the quality of life things like rubbing fenders and the little things are dealt with, because they're not going to notice that, right? It's kind of like all the maintenance around the house, changing light bulbs and things that they're not going to do because they're kids. Laundry, things that does not even pass through their brains. They're just like trash goes here and someone magically takes the trash out, right? But as they get older, and that's what kind of you have to decide with your kids, and I'm sure, and each of my kids are different, right? You end up pushing on them, well, hey, look, this doesn't just magically happen. There's no trash fairy. Somebody takes out the trash every week, from the indoor trash cans, and then you slowly push that onto them. And so I think like the bicycle stuff.
It's simple, easy to understand for anyone.
Sorry, I was trying to get rid of I'll edit that out. I was trying to get rid of that message on the thing, but I can't get in. I can't get into the Twitch. So I think that's from Twitch. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so I was trying to get into the Twitch, but then it started auto playing. But anyway,
simple, easy to understand.
Yeah. Anyway, keep going, Matt. So pick up from like
I lost it.
Reveal. I'll help you. Like reveal. Go back to like you just got to be back to say something like you have to review. You're talking about how you need to work to them. So take it from there.
Yeah. So with your kids, you'll have to show them the trash fairy doesn't magically come each week and take out the trash. Trash goes in the trash can, and then maybe your new job, now that you see that this happens, is Sunday nights you take the indoor trash out to the big trash can, and you slowly you make the work visible to them, then you assign the work to them, and then you retire to a life of luxury.
Yeah. Okay. I like this plan. This is very hopeful. Like pay yourself first, sort of savings plan. And I want to just add in my understanding is that it takes doing something about 40 times to kind of build up a habit. Or something like that. I don't know. 40 sounds like some kind of biblical number that someone just pulled out of the Bible to start using.
10,000 hours, sure.
And so I think what I'm hearing is start having the kids take out the trash with me. And then I also like
I would say this though, slightly different thing is like I do an analysis of like they're sort of like how much additional work is it to you to do the what Matt is advocating for. Like I could just take out the trash and be done with it versus like I need to start passing some of the things off. So I kind of evaluate it like case by case, and also too I think age maturity with the kid plays a role here. Like what point do you think there's going to be too much resistance to ever get them to do it versus like maybe if I wait, I think a year's a good example. Like if they're this old, I may wait a year because I think it's going to go better, even though conventional wisdom may be that we should start earlier because it's just like, oh, that's going to be a certain amount of effort.
No,
I kind of like
you can't put it off though. You can't put it off because they're going to get to college and they don't know how to use a mop.
I hear this all the time. I hear this. I've heard that same example probably 3 or 4 times. Maybe this is a holiday in the US. So
this is my son,
right? And it's like, no, but like I think like you're the perfect person to ask, man, because you're like, well, because it's like when they're in college, they kind of just have to figure it out on their own, or it's at that point, like there's minimal, like take the classic laundry or messy room. It's like at that point, if they're forget even college, if they're they're no longer living with you, it is their problem. And it's like, it is up to you at that point. Like you will either figure it out or things will be dirty. But I think, and that's fine because you don't have to deal with it. So I think Matt, you're the expert because you have the college age children. Does that not work? Do you still get stuck doing the laundry or something, even if they're at college?
Well, the laundry comes home on weekends. So yeah, but the he had a room inspection, where the door managers or whatever come in and make sure the place is not, a health hazard. And so, we actually went over there and taught him how to clean. And still to that point.
Wait a minute, that's the moment. Like, I think, let me go back to that moment. Was there a discussion of like, just tell them to clean, and if they don't do well, they get a failed inspection. Like,
yeah, well, he did ask for help, so that was good. But then even when we got there, it was like, no, you have to do the work.
Well, no, but I think that's different. Like, then there was a little bit of like, he was ready, right? Because he actually asked for help. Even though he didn't
you don't want to wait till he's 18.
Well,
so take us back. What would you do differently? This is a perfect case study. So you would have forced it onto him. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah. I with this, with the siblings, they're getting, more involved earlier is kind of the point.
So they can blame their older brother. That's good. That's excellent. Perfect.
Or the parents. Parents will get blamed anyway.
No, I like that. That's good.
Now, I think Brandon, until Matt Ray brought us back to responsibility and parenting, you had been articulating in words what I had never really, kind of the fogginess in my head, which was like, basically my first criteria in most everything is, how much work is this going to be for me? Right? Like, unless it's something I want to do, then in which case it's going to be all the work because I enjoy doing it. And so that's sort of like the first rung is like, well, I could just, like, walking the dog is a great example. I don't like having the dog, but I walk the dog the most because it's just like, I can just get it done. Right now. But then you brought up you walked down a whole scenario that I think of often, which is like, the first time they live with a significant other, they're now responsible for this, right? Like, they're the ones who are going to teach them how to, like, load up a dishwasher, wash dishes properly.
That they shouldn't have to deal with that.
Well, now see, this is, I think, where our roads diverge, Matt Ray. Is just like, I agree they shouldn't have to deal with it, but I think I'm done here. Like, I've tried, and until there is some some intrinsic motivation, as you just went over, it's like, I'm happy to help someone if they ask me to help them, but like, this whole thing of like, I'm helping you even though you don't want to be helped is
but like, see, it's freeing to you if you can get them to finally take over that chore. There's a payoff here.
Yeah. I'm with you on
that. I think though, like the whether you're going to live in a student co-op, you're going to have some what do they call that role in Australia? Does it end in IE? The dormies, like whoever RAs, like something, whether it's them, some other authority that comes in.
Advisos.
With advisos. That's good. And,
no, but before we get off it, I do want to go back to the bike situation, because I would like to propose this, and I would like Matt Ray to critique it. Would be like, now on the bike specifically, I think I'm not worried about what it looks like at all. What I do, and I feel like I do this for like plumbing, bikes, anything that sort of like requires normal wear and tear, I will do my own little inspection of that stuff, right? To just make sure it's like working. There are no problems, right? And that is sort of like just me sort of checking that like nothing's broken, nothing needs a major fix, and there isn't like some major problem. And if there is, I will do it. So in your case, I would probably walk by the bike, whatever, pick some interval once a week, once a month. And if I see something that's kind of like a fender bent, I'll just bend it out, right? Knowing that. But I wouldn't like replace the fender, right? Or I wouldn't like, clean the bike unless in this case, your son asked or there was something really wrong with it. So that I just find, now that is just more like, I don't know what you want to call it, like preventative maintenance, right? Now, this is, I guess, how like every, I don't know, this is such a stereotypical dad, father kind of moment. It's just like, hey man, it's easier for me to walk around and just take a quick inspection of everything and see if there's anything I can like do quick preventative maintenance, then just wait until no one says anything. And then like the classic example, the toilet's overflowing or whatever, the bike has a flat and the rim has to be replaced. So that is purely, I do that as my own pure motivation because it's easier for me. So I don't know, Matt, I don't know what your preventative maintenance strategy is.
So, I mean,
That is, you just got to do it.
I think Stuart Brand has some new book out about his theory that everything is maintenance, which I was thinking I should read because that's a good theory. Maybe if I can get my mind around the idea that like maintenance is just sort of like therapeutic activity in life. Boy, just think of the superpowers I would have if I was fixing things up. That would be great. Speaking of maintenance, it seems like every vendor and I don't know what you call them, public cloud service providers. I just call them all vendors because that's fun. It seems like they're doing a lot of maintenance on their AI portfolios and adding some new things and doing that. And now every year reInvent comes along. Well, every year reInvent comes along, but every year I think as things go on, we know that Brandon is a very close watcher. I logged into Slack the other day. And you know how you log into Slack and it's like, there's 30 new messages. So I clicked on that. And then it was like, there's 80 new messages. So I clicked on that. And then it said, there's 100 new messages. So I clicked on that. And then I stopped clicking when after that it said there's 108 new messages. But that's what was happening in our Slack channel during reInvent. So I know you've seen and you watched a lot of it. You even commented on the music with some other people. And my opening question to get into this is like I heard, they got a lot of AI stuff. And so my hope is that the two Alexas I have are now going to be super awesome with the next software update they get, right?
Yes. They mentioned Alexa. I think that would be that was sort of in the software defined talk Slack. That was kind of a running joke, is that was sort of because everyone's been doing AI. That's no matter what, when you give a keynote, you always start by saying like, we've been doing AI for the last 25 years, right? Every single vendor does that. And then they kind of reference something. So they did kind of reference Alexa, which is like, it's not such a good example. That isn't a good one. So I don't know. They didn't talk about exactly how Alexa will change, but we can only hope that they will get some of the nice AI or Q. There's a little preview or the of the new assistant functionality that they discussed this week.
So give us an overview of like the AI landscape. Like what do they do in AI? And like what I'm interested in is like if we were to come up with like their deal or their style or like the way that they do things, right? Like I think we kind of know what OpenAI's deal is, right? Mm-hmm. Like I've logged into the Claude interface and I feel like they're trending towards like the Gap of AI. The Gap and Old Navy, just purely on their color choice and their look and feel and limited interaction with them. And then you go to Microsoft and it's a very Microsoft-y thing. It's like, hey, it's everywhere. How about we do that? Right. Like, and I actually haven't experienced it being everywhere yet. And then Google, as always, is just like, what's happening?
Hard, right?
And so what is I have some theories based on my 5 minutes of interaction and thinking, but like I'm especially interested in like what is Amazon's style? Like what are they doing there?
Well, maybe we kind of like start with kind of where things are similar and where they're different. So having watched all of them now, the Microsoft keynote, it was a couple of weeks ago, Matt and I did an episode on that, and then GCP was in the spring, and now of course reInvent, is that they all follow a very similar pattern as how they kind of roll it out, right? There's essentially the infrastructure.
They start with having the NVIDIA CEO come out.
No, that's the middle. I'll tell you exactly how it starts, right? First, they start with what I'm just going to broadly call infrastructure in the bottom layer. And they all have like, as you like to refer to, Coach, like a burger diagram with different layers. So AWS, this was 3, Microsoft was 5, and I can't remember GCP. So
that's a big Mac burger right there.
They all kind of start with, okay, the infrastructure is where they begin around that. And then that's where they talk about their new chip, right? Everyone is developing, either has a new chip that they've developed. That's an incremental improvement on the last one. So that was news here. The Trainium chip in the what they call Inferentia, which is very hard for me to say. Those chips are from AWS, and they built some new ones, right? And they also have this new processor. Microsoft announced, that they will be having their first chip. Now, this was one departure, because AWS is famous for like customer focused. They don't talk about competitors, but they did specifically say, other vendors have never shipped the chip, which is of course,
welcome to the party. Yeah.
which is like, of course, Microsoft, right? It's like that. So they took a couple digs directly at Microsoft, like, oh, that's a little bit of a departure. And then I can't remember, like Google, I can't remember how long Google's been building its own chips, because I think they may have been first.
They've been doing for TensorFlow for AI workloads for a while. I don't think they have a general purpose ARM chip yet.
All right, so that's good. So okay,
Not their own. I think they use Ampere.
Okay, so that's like step one of the keynote is like, look at all these new chips. Somehow they're the fastest chips ever been built. They beat everyone. Some type of like some kind of statement around like pentaflops. They use the word like, or zeniflops. I mean, they use the ones that I'm not that familiar with. So I sometimes forget, like, is that more or better? Like, which is the greater, right? Because it's just sort of meaningless. But it's like, okay, so they say all of that. And then they talk a little bit about like some type of developer tool that they have. Then they talk GPUs. And then I think, Matt, then they invite the CEO of NVIDIA on stage, who has been at every single keynote. He has, quickly to say, I'm calling this, he has completed the keynote grand slam. He was at VMworld.
Absolutely.
He was at.
He even swept the miners. I mean,
there's not been anyone that I think has been on stage at all of these keynotes.
I'm surprised I didn't see him at KubeCon. Yeah,
probably. So Jensen, so they all get on stage and they all say how important and how long they've been working with NVIDIA. Jensen Huang. Every single one.
AWS brought him out before they talked about their chips. So they brought him out.
I think it was, I could be wrong. I think it was in between, because I think they did the chips, the infrastructure, then they brought him out, and then they got into the Bedrock, which we'll get to in a second. So okay. But anyway, either way, literally Jensen wears exactly the same outfit. He has exactly the same black leather jacket on. He starts off about how he's very excited to be there and how they've been working with said partner for a really long time and been doing these incredibly innovative things. So it's like, so the huge winner, I mean, it's nothing new, but it's just like, if anyone is just taking home the bag of money, it is absolutely NVIDIA, because they're all up there and they act like, what I think is funny too, like act like as if this was the only partnership that had ever been done with NVIDIA. It's like, I don't even think they watched the other clips, because and I think it would be great if somebody had the video editing skills, is to do a supercut of like his VMware talk, his GCP talk, his Microsoft talk, and his AWS talk. Because I watch them on, I feel like he says exactly the same thing. So that all starts the infrastructure side of it. And what I guess it just nets out as is sort of like, we have all the NVIDIA GPUs you could possibly need. I think that's all they're really trying to say. So again, as someone that doesn't use it all the time, it's just like, I don't know. It's just sort of like, okay, sounds good.
Well, let me pause the omnibus overview here, because that was a question that I just had. It's just like, why have that guy on? But I think maybe what you're highlighting is like, you got to have that guy on, because otherwise people are going to be like, you can't get the chips. So if you can get this guy on stage, it means he's going to make sure that the chips ship from Asia to your data centers. And so this is just like, it's like a signal that
he's got like an insurance racket going, where he's like, if I'm not on stage, you don't get your chips. And at least, that's what the customers are going to think. Yeah,
absolutely. And to your point, like, I think he's taken it so far, because at this show, he actually spent some time talking about, I believe it's called DGI, which is the NVIDIA cloud. So they it, what is it?
It's basically DGC. Yeah.
DGC. Okay, we'll look that up in a second. But either way, it was like, so NVIDIA basically has its own cloud where you can go use all of their GPUs. So he basically talked about how, you can use that as well. And I thought, like, that was like, wow, there was a time this would have never gone on certainly on an AWS keynote, but anywhere else where someone would walk on stage and actually propose, oh, we have this other cloud infrastructure that's already built and you can use it from, in this case, AWS. So, I mean, to your point, it's like, I don't want to say
that's a baller move, right?
I don't want to
show up and you're like, you got a great party here, but you know what? We got better stuff at my party.
It is though, but it's like a real sign of where the power is. And so to your point, Cote, it's like, I think he has to be on stage because it does provide confidence. Everyone has it, but it's also, they're all a little bit dependent on NVIDIA. Like if NVIDIA were to come out tomorrow and be like, we're doing an exclusive and we're only selling cloud-based GPUs to like pick any one of the major three, that would be a huge stock hit to whoever wasn't in that
I see.
partnership. So it really is impressive how much a hold that NVIDIA has on the whole industry right now. And so therefore, like the race for somebody to actually build something equivalent to NVIDIA is, obviously ongoing, and, everyone's going to try to do it, but it's, easier said than done kind of thing. And so just to correct myself, I don't know what I said. So it's the GGX platform.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then this is the other thing you can help me with is like I, with my cursory look, I look at all the the other two major cloud things, and I kind of sift through their AI announcements, and it seems like, so y'all have the same thing basically, but like how are they like differentiating themselves?
All right, so that would be the second level, right? So okay, so let's just say like, and I think this would frustrate all the cloud hyperscalers, is that we kind of just look at the infrastructure and say it's all the same. Of course, they would all roll out all the details about all the chips and all the things about why they're better. But again, I think it is kind of like, to somebody, it's like probably have what you need to build models, right? So I think that's sort of like table stakes. Now the middle layer is sort of like foundational models or LLMs, right? So it's like, okay, if you want to use something that exists, how easily can you do that? So in the case of Microsoft, I think they called it like a store, right? They were sort of like, we got like a store of models for you. And in the case of Amazon, they call it Amazon Bedrock, which is essentially a collection of popular foundation models as well as LLMs that are ready for you to use or to train. And so that so the primary difference here is Microsoft is OpenAI, and now Amazon is Anthropic, right? And then in addition, they have, if you will, both are going to have all the open source models that are available. So this is like Llama, and then each company kind of also builds their own model. So in the case of Amazon, they have a series of models. I think they were called Titan. I'll have to double check that.
So they're allowed to use the Llama one, despite the fact that they've got more than $700 million in revenue or whatever.
I don't know.
That seems weird to me. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they said Llama 2. I don't know if that matters to your.
Well, that was the whole
maybe
kerfuffle about it not being open source. Was it?
Maybe it's like when you install those sound drivers to make MP3s on your computer, and it's like, we don't actually do anything here, but it'd be really awesome if you clicked on this link and it went and installed this stuff for you. And so like they don't actually touch it. It just
Gotcha. They're like,
I'm just speculating. But
when you hit order, you have deployed Llama, not us.
Yeah, and so
really, not, maybe that doesn't happen at all.
What you end up with is sort of like any model that's popular in like Hugging Face was another one, right? I think it's like any of those that are available, they're going to be available in kind of all three of them. And then again, other than NVIDIA, the people that made the most money during this conference was Anthropic. So of course, all the open AI chaos happened last week, and that was just craziness. So there was, we were all kind of speculating in the Slack, like, would the Anthropic CEO show up and be on stage? Sure enough, they call him up, and he actually get a longer session than Jensen Huang on the NVIDIA side. They actually sat down at benches and they did a little, like, if you will,
benches. Oh, they did the sit down,
not benches, I guess, stools, whatever. But they did a little, kind of a little contrived, but it was fine. It was good, right? A little contrived conversation about like, tell us about why you did Anthropic. And you could kind of predict the answers. It's like, well, we really take security and privacy and governance very seriously. That's been a foundation of, our company. So they kind of go on and on about that. So I'm just literally, as I'm watching the Anthropic CEO talk, I'm like, I could just see the billions of dollars in valuation for his company going up, because it's like, it's really clear that, Amazon is really kind of bet on Anthropic, like Microsoft has bet on OpenAI. Now, I don't know, what I'm a little confused about is, like, I know Google has invested in Anthropic as well, but that person wasn't on the stage at GCP. So I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but I was really like, it was clear, right? In the thing that they just kept saying it, and I guess it's good messaging, it's just privacy, security, and governance. That was the thing they must have said, 1,000 times during that. And that's obviously either a subtle or a direct kind of jab at the OpenAI, Microsoft kind of like craziness of the last week. So
yeah.
I
don't know if this is the case, but like what I'm thinking here, if I was trying to pull out some like strategy and differentiation, is, so you got like not only the three, but whoever's doing AI stuff, right? And I think the move is they're going to have quote unquote all the models, right? Like whatever models you want that are free to have, we'll all have them. And then so in a way, it doesn't make them worthless, but it makes them not monetizable so much. It kind of, in an odd way,
makes them non-differentiatable, which goes back to their strength as the incumbent.
It neutralizes the threat of all these open source models because everyone has them. Has them? What am I? Anyways, everyone has them, and then so that leaves you with, I think, maybe 4 ways you could differentiate. The first one, which will be eliminated very quickly, which is just like enterprise grade. And it's like, yeah, well, of fucking course you have that. Next, right? Like if you don't have that, you can't even compete. It's just, it's like my joke about like security. It's like, has any enterprise vendor ever said, no, we're not secure? Like,
well, but for them to harp on that, they're trying to throw shade on the competition.
Early on in a market, people don't even know what secure and private and stuff means. So what you're also kind of looking for is like
some anchoring.
Will you figure out what that means? Like we're freaking out about something we don't even know what we're freaking out about. So can you tell us what we're freaking out about and tell us that it will be okay? That's kind of a fun, weird cycle of enterprise software. So you got that going on, but very quickly, like that becomes like pretty much undifferentiated thing because everyone's going to have it. But then that gets you to, I'm going to lose track of, I think I said there were 4 things, but then as you were going over, Brandon, there's basically like as we've learned in the cloud native world, you have user experience. I don't know if they have prompt X or AI X, but you're going to have some sort of X at the end, like DevX, where it's just like, there you go.
What you're getting to is like, how easy is it for you to, if you will, train or customize the model on your thing? So that's, to your point, it's a management kind of question. Please.
And then so, for example, like if you are to compare the whatever it is, the user experience of downloading the Llama thing and installing it versus going to ChatGPT, the Llama thing just like eats a bag of llama. Like it's no good. Like it just doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. And then so like similarly, you could see that in the cloud things of just like you could have the most badass models ever, and like if you start it up, it's kind of like a Kubernetes story. Like if you start it up and you're kind of like, so where do I type the stuff? Then like it's no good. And then I guess, and then it seems like, so that is something that you can legitimately differentiate on, especially like in a cloud
just to
model.
pause for a second, just to say, and this is where it does tie back to the infrastructure, because what every vendor wants to say is like, yes, the hardware I just told you about and the chips I've been building, they run the model faster, better, cheaper for you. And that's kind of that's how these things kind of, the interplay between the two go.
Right. Okay. And then so the last 2 is you could have as the, I don't know if the partnerships are exclusive with OpenAI and Anthropic, but they seem de facto exclusive, right? Like whatever that
Anthropic's not.
Yeah, so OpenAI is exclusive to Microsoft. That one for sure. And then Anthropic is a little bit more confused. But today, to your point, like the most clearest differentiation between them right now is like if you believe OpenAI or Anthropic, if either, those are really proprietary things. So it's like if you believe one is better than the other, your choice is obvious. You would pick the Microsoft for OpenAI or Anthropic forever. If you believe you just want another model that's freely available, right? Or only, a less well-known model that's only available, one of the providers, hyper clouds, then you would pick that one. But I guess maybe to come back to it, it's like, there is this moment here of like, who has the power? Like, if you believe OpenAI or Anthropic, or if you believe there's a model to rule all models, okay, then the power really is with whoever wins that. And right now we'd say Anthropic and OpenAI are fighting that out. Now, the hyperscalers, not surprisingly, they want you to believe it's like, oh, it's kind of like the old agent thing, right? Or like, it's like, oh, you're going to need 5 or 10 or access to 20 of these things, right? And like, look, we've got it. So there is an implicit kind of motivation for all the cloud providers to be like, yeah, we got 5 models, we got 10 models, and and they're all kind of different. And sometimes you need one, sometimes you need another, because that sort of like, that makes them, if you will, the manager of managers. Whereas and I know, Matt, you and I talked about this. There is a vision of this AI thing. Is like, listen, there's just really one great model, and you just tell that model what you are and what you want to do.
That's Brandon's dream.
That's my but I think that is at least one vision of this, right? Versus like, I mean, kind of like this is the part where I don't know, maybe you relate to it. So like, I don't want all these like Lego pieces. Like, I don't want, like, you know what I mean? And this is, I just want to go to Claude or OpenAI, and I just want to start doing stuff. I don't want all of this to know.
I don't want to do my own bake-off. I don't want to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
See, what you'll never get from any of the cloud vendors is a breakout of which ones are more popular than others, because they don't want to give that power to the vendors. They don't want to let OpenAI know that, oh, sure, Microsoft has 20 choices, but 98% of the workloads are on OpenAI.
So to round it out, this is the third thing. It's just like, I mean, and we can bring in our our annual thinking on open source is like, well, you have a proprietary model that's closed source that only is available from you, and you make it good, right? And so that would be a way of differentiating. And now I think you're making me think. It seems like, Brandon, the AI model is the wrong word, but the strategy, your dream strategy, I think, is what Google could do. Google could just come in and be like, yeah, why do you need multiple models? Ours does everything, right? Like, and they're like, do you remember how Google works, where you type a thing in a box and it does everything? That's what ours does.
Right.
But it doesn't do that anymore.
I have the exact analogy for you, Cote, because we worked together time is like, go back in time, right? There were multiple search engines, right? And then there was like Google search. And then I remember when we were working at one of the places we worked together, right? It's like, you kind of like, we're like, hey, we should get one of these Google search appliances, right? Remember the thin box? Because it's we should just do that. And it's like, we should just use Google for everything, even though there was like a million other types of ways of searching. And then it even got to the point where like, you know what? It's better just to search the regular Google than use this Google search box inside, because it doesn't really index everything.
Because we misconfigured our firewalls, and it was already in here.
Honestly, it's better just to use it. So then you kind of you keep walking up that stack, and it's like today there are other search engines. I don't want to be like there's none, but like most of the time you're just like, nah, I just go to Google for everything, and it just figures it out. You know what I mean? It figures out what I want most of the time. And I think there is a vision of the world that is like that. And I think that is where Anthropic and OpenAI are sort of sitting in between, right? And this is why it's interesting. OpenAI is still vastly more popular than the Microsoft version of OpenAI, because because of just brand, even though it's the same. And so there is this vision of like, no, this is just we're in a very short period of time where everyone thinks they need to build their own models. But in the end, the vision, if you believe one of these things is going to be $1 trillion company, we may end up just going to one of them. And it's like, yeah, we just go to this one place and we all use that. Or, or this more kind of piecemeal method will play out. And it's like, yeah, we need 20 different models, and we pick the right one at the right time.
Yeah. And then the fourth one, of course, as always, pricing. Yeah. Right. It's just like, how are you going to price this stuff, and what are you going to do? And I think
not only that, pricing, this is Matt's world. I mean, I assume, Matt, people are already working. It's like pricing is so multi-dimensional, complicated, for lack of a better phrase, that like, this is where you really want an AI to figure out the right way to do it. Because when you go, you have to figure out which types of chips you would want, what the workload is, on which model across multiple providers. Like, that's kind of all the stuff you would want to know to then try to figure out like, oh, the best price for me to do this is here. I don't know if anyone will be able to figure that out. That's just
unless using AI as a core piece of your business, I don't think nobody wants to bake off. You're gonna, like, you tell me there are 20 different models out there. How am I going to tell which one is the best for my generic workload? I need some monitoring ML that I'm going to call AI. Which of these tools do I run it through? Is like, how can I adequately tell which is the best and which one is the best price performance? I mean, that just sounds, unless I'm dealing at a large scale, I'll probably just go with the default. I'll probably I'll throw it into this because that's what I've heard is good.
Now, hold on. This is generating a lot more thoughts. Maybe we'll get back to the reinvent stuff at some point. This is much more fun to talk about. Is one, That sounds like a great idea for some sort of startup or industry trade association. How would you POC and benchmark various models, right? Like you would have
Oh
like
yeah.
5 to 20 different scenarios that you would walk them through and see how they responded.
Well, I
And you'd
mean,
have to
there are
evolve it over
lots of
time.
folks who are hanging up their shingle as being an AI consultant already. You know,
But
where
yeah.
they're
But
saying
you,
I spend the time to understand this stuff, so you don't have to. And to me, I'm
right.
like, good for them, because I honestly don't have the
and
appetite
and
for
and
this.
I maybe what you need is like you go to like Comcast and you're like, give me your 500 top customer service cases, and I'm going to make a battery of tests that you run through the AI for those things, like a whole bunch of stuff like that. And you just see how, like, fuck this chess playing bullshit. No one gives a shit about that.
Let's say
That's
Hugging
not
Face is the
enterprise.
closest, right? Hugging Face basically does list out all the popular models by kind of like the function. And then I think they
Yeah.
do have, so I mean, that's a one place. They obviously don't have all the proprietary ones, but that's the start of it anyway, just for people that want to go check
Yeah.
it out
And
themselves.
and to that point, I'm pretty sure, given any model, if you gave me an hour with it, I could give an evaluation of it based on how it can do Dungeons and Dragons at this point. Like, and I've gone through various ones, and like pretty quickly you give it the prompts and you're like, this one's bullshit. Like, it doesn't know what it's doing. Versus this one's like a
But
little
then
more
how do you know
sophisticated.
if you set it up right? That's the thing. It's like there's probably
Right.
layers to
Well,
this where
that goes
you
to
spent an hour and somebody's gonna be like, no, 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 no.
exactly.
I'm a 2 expert, and
And I don't even, this is great, this question, because I didn't even think about this, but that's a part of the usability of it is like, yeah, like if I go in and I'm like, you're a call service agent for a major North American cable provider, like it should know every single scenario, right? Or like now you're selling motorcycle insurance to Australians, it should know, like, got it, right? Like, because really, like, most things that people do, I don't want to call them like that guy did bullshit jobs, but like it's a known job, right?
yeah.
That you're
Right. So let's
doing, and
pause there for a second because I
like
think they
known
made an announcement
interactions.
around this. Is like, okay, so what you're kind of talking about, and they even talked about call center agents, was like, well, in order to be an expert for a specific company, that company may have specific kind of information that needs to be trained on that's private. So they talked about this idea of retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, right? So the idea here is that you have a model that's, been, if you will, that's already built, but then you can say, listen, use this other information when you're answering these kind of
Oh,
questions.
that would be
And that's the
great.
place where you kind of put all, if you will, all of your secret or proprietary information about how to like book a ticket or how to like answer a call center thing. And so that's another, like, this is kind of the old agent monitoring thing, is like, hey, come over here, configure your model, then we'll safely connect to your data sources, calling this RAG. I don't know, it's a weird, I'm having a hard time that acronym, but whatever. And then from that, you don't worry about it because all the information's safe. And also you can be, if you will, put in some rules about preventing, like, if you will, inappropriate responses or hallucinations and things like that. So it's all pitched around kind of this idea of safety. It's like, for your company, if you come here, you can use these models and we can connect to your information and we can make it very safe so that if there's any private information in there, it doesn't travel over the internet. And two, when we give answers, they're appropriate and you can't, get off track, right? So that's a whole nother pitch to like why you would use, in this case, AWS or other competitors, like, if you will, syncing up the data sources.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I assume all of that's secure, right?
That came up a few times during the presentation. So, but maybe that then leads us to the next one. So it's like, okay, so we covered infrastructure, which is like, oh man, do I got to do all this and figure out what I want? And then we covered all the models that are available, or and we'll call them LLMs, right? Functional models and LLMs. Okay, but then we get to the point where it's like, well, wait a minute. Obviously, the hyperscalers are aware of this. Like, we don't want to just provide people the models because maybe there's just one good model. So now we get to the apps. Okay, so now to set the stage here, right? We have Google Duet, right? We have Microsoft Copilot, and now we have Amazon Q, which is essentially all three of their attempts to basically, don't worry about it. Like, you don't have to do anything, if you will, just start using the application that you want. And we've already taken care of all the AI for you, right? So the classic example here was, GitHub Copilot. And then they, what is it called here? Amazon launched a specific kind of Copilot competitor to generate code, and then Google has theirs, Duet as well. So if you kind of go through, each hyperscaler has a whole set, if you will, of these apps ready to go, right? Make it real easy for you to use them without having to do anything. And another example they gave was like Amazon Q's code transformation. That's very similar to Google Duets. Like, hey, give me some code. I'll rewrite it from a language like, Java to JavaScript or whatever it is, right? Whatever the example is. So this is, if you will, it's kind of like all the hyperscalers want to jump over the people providing the models and be like, oh, no, we're going to provide you the apps. Like, don't worry about it. Like, if you don't care about it, just use our apps. Our apps are going to be the best, right? And so that's kind of the coming fight, right? Is like, where is the money in this hamburger diagram? Is it the infrastructure, which it isn't? That seems like the cost, right? Is it picking the models and configuring the models because that's what people want? Or is it just building the right apps? And that's Copilot, Q, and Duet. So that's what I think the next coming year is all going to be about, figuring out where the value lies in that kind of stack of offerings from each company.
Right. And then so I would guess that Amazon's deal here would eventually be like, we don't want to compete with SAP. And it's not that we
No, they
like
do. They want all those SAP dollars.
And so like, well, okay, so then they would start building up just like CRM and ERP systems that are powered by AI stuff instead, right? Or would they rather just like sell this underlying thing to all of the ERP vendors and be the provider for it? Because
I mean, their model is proven. They look for things that they can do easily and take away the margin of other people. I mean, some of the most basic things they introduce, like thin clients and hand scanners, and it's like things that aren't super complicated that they can just add to your AWS bill. And so a full-blown SAP, that's going to take a while, but maybe they can take some of the smaller workloads. So I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done like a Salesforce light.
Well, a couple things there. One, Salesforce at the opening of Salesforce got a ton of time about the growing relationship between AWS and Salesforce, and clearly Salesforce has bought a lot of AWS because they got like a whole like, this is the future Salesforce and things like that. Now, to your question, though, is like, I think the business apps are like a step too far right now, because the places that all these apps, so Copilot, Q, and Duet, for sure they want to help you write code, right? They all want to basically help you do some type of data analytics. It's like, put your data with us, and then they all have some type of AI-based interface to it. You kind of see the same example. It's like, they all kind of have the same thing. It's like, don't spend your time like sitting down and writing SQL queries and trying to figure out how many apples are sorted in the last quarter. Just ask through natural search and be like, how many apples were sold last quarter? And then they'll be like, compare that to last year, right? So there's like the business intelligence as an area. And then they're all kind of stepping into like, I don't know if we want to call it like, low code dev or like, some type of like robotic process management, but it's sort of like, they'll kind of chain together simple tasks. Like get this data, analyze the data this, and then do this, right? So it's kind of like this idea of like maybe putting together a presentation is like often the example. I can't remember, did they use the QBR example today? I keep seeing the same one over and over, but like that's the idea. It's like, okay, we can do all of that. And I think that's kind of the frontier we're at now. And then what you're talking about, Cote, would be like the next frontier would be like, actually, like, like, why don't you just like, why don't I even need SAP? Just like do everything, like do all of my manufacturing automation for me. But that's a little bit beyond what I think people are pitching today.
Right. Yeah, like you would go to Claude and be like, email all my suppliers the forecast for Q4 and make sure we get all those iPhones shipped, and also notify FedEx. Enter. Take care of that for you.
Yeah, well, I think even some of the pitches are even more broad. It's like, hey, maximize the money for the next quarter, right? And then it's just sort of like, oh, it looks it over. It's like,
wait. I can just tell the AI to make me a bunch of money.
Well, if you read Matt Levine's latest newsletter today, he actually shows how an AI was trained to basically trade it, and it ended up doing insider trading. So it was like, that was the first thing to figure out how to do.
And
so
then
it's not insider if the AI can get to it.
It's
right?
Now Amazon has the missing link here. Once it's figured out, you're going to want to make a serverless call, right? Like, is that what's
Yes,
going to
that
happen
was
to kick it off?
that was what. Yes, that was. Now, Amazon, to their credit, Amazon actually showed how you could use the Amazon Q to basically like come up with more compelling ads and offers. To basically, maximize whatever it is you're selling, which I thought was like just like the most honest use case I had seen. And all of these I've been watching for months. It's like, there you go. It's like, yes, I get it. That is something I am sure you've been doing and you're good at. It wasn't like, let's go out and like fix climate change and do all this, all this very abstract stuff. Is like, here's a way
that actually would be like, I don't know if how much time you two or the listeners spend looking at Google Analytics and trying to figure out what the fuck is this thing trying to tell me. But that might be great, is just to like get the CSV from Google Analytics and just be like, can you tell me which pages got a lot of views and where they came from?
That is clearly 100%. Those use cases are all targeted at this kind of business intelligence layer of all the, again, of, like I said,
that seems like a logical next step so first off, they started with, we'll do things for developers. But I think marketers, if you're Amazon and you want a piece of that Google search dollar or that advertising dollar, I think that's a big opportunity, to start rolling out your own web analytics with powered by AI kind of stuff. I mean, Amazon's the kind of folks that'll do that kind of stuff to mess with other people's business. But I just want to point out, like, I don't like the name Q. I mean,
it's very, there were several things in the Slack when we were watching it. People came up like, where did it come from? I guess the Star Trek Q. There's a Star, like an evil.
Well, yeah, that was my point. My point was like, you've got James Bond Q, the guy who comes up with like single purpose useless gadgets
and also
that are crazy expensive.
But quick fact check or quick note on that is like people pointed out that Amazon does own the studio.
Oh, I know.
Owns James Bond, so they do have the right to use that.
So that's probably where they're going. But the Q from Star Trek is the like omniscient asshole. Yeah, that's who I'm always going to think of this AI now. Is like the guy who like, this is kind of an antagonistic relationship I have with Q. Thank you.
Well, I think
he never goes away.
Maybe we should quickly rank them. My ranking was like, I think Microsoft, to the credit, they kind of nailed it. I think Copilot is the right metaphor. I think it's good. I think Duet is sort of like a poor man's Copilot, but I like it. It's easy for me to remember. Q, I honestly it took me a while to understand like what they were talking about. I was like, because it's just
I know. It's not a good name.
It was,
and I'm sure
it was like third in this ranking of names. I was like, I'm kind of confused what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you need some sort of like sidekick, but you got the Sherpa thing. That's probably like too cultural, appropriation. So you need some sort of like assistant, that and Copilot's like the best one because it's like that they're still a professional. They're still capable of landing the plane, but they're here to help.
Yeah. Well, sure. Naming these things is hard, and also I think I'm no like Corey Quinn or whatever, but I think like maybe Amazon's like, how about we spend less fucking time naming stuff and more time making money? Like they don't necessarily have like.
Well, that's the problem with Amazon is they go back and forth between totally obscure, unknowable names like Dex, and then things like advanced analytics for remote Aurora databases, and you're like, that's exactly what I thought it was. So I mean, Q tells me nothing.
I mean, the foundation of AWS naming is S3 and EC2. It's like, what are these cars? Like, these names don't mean anything. They're like, they're
now the one thing. All of these things, I think the most immediate value everyone's going to get, and I think this applies to Q, Copilot, and Duet, is like, and they showed this in the AWS keynote, was like, they've obviously trained it a lot on, in this case, using AWS. So they showed several things where you could be like, how do I set up a load balancer in AWS? And it spits out like the instructions. And I'm like, and like you have to see the same thing at Google for setting up GCP. And it's like, thank God. I honestly, all of these things are way overdue. I mean, it is a miracle because I'm just like,
it's just a matter of time before somebody notices that it's like making recommendations that are like, you know what you need? A managed NAT.
True.
And
I mean, maybe
and people are gonna be like, this thing's always telling me to spend stupid
that's
money.
true. But right now, I am so confused when I have to do things. Like I do feel kind of lost. In fact, I go to OpenAI sometimes and type in like, "How do you do this?" And it tells me. So the fact that like they're all figuring, because that's a place that they clearly have spent a lot of time for themselves, and it's like I think it's going to be really good. Is like, yeah, like how do I do this thing inside the services you've given me? Right. And I think, that's not just an Amazon statement. I think the same applies to GCP and Azure as well. So that is going to be an immediate value. If we get nothing else from AI, we will be told where the YAML is and how to edit it. And that will finally save all of us some time and effort.
You know, inevitably, if they automate setting up load balancers, there's going to be some article in Business Insider that's like, look, this set up a Hitler subdomain. And then, just nice.
Oh man.
So there were a lot of other announcements. Give us just like a couple quick highlights, Brandon.
Well, I think again, the structure of the keynote was sort of like compute. They did a little bit on storage. They're very proud of this new S3 Express high performance storage. Again, seemed good. The one thing I thought was interesting, they led the keynote with a little kind of overview of AWS availability zones. And I was like, like what's going on? And so, because I was like, I don't know, like, I think we know that, right? And so my guess there is that like Amazon feels like the number of data centers it has is not being well understood or represented, because I think they mentioned like 80 something, which I think is twice how much Microsoft has. And then 2, they spent a lot of time talking about availability zones, because again, they must have some research, or they must feel like people don't understand that their availability, at least in their view, approach is much better than the competitor. So I just thought that was interesting, was like, oh, they feel like they're not getting credit for this, because they spent the first 10 minutes going over that. And it's like, clearly, the people that know all about that. So I thought that was interesting. You had the other shot they made at OpenAI. They didn't say Microsoft directly, but they showed a screenshot of the OpenAI, kind of like an article about how Microsoft had like told people to stop using it internally. So that was the closest. They didn't name it, but they showed a screenshot. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then kind of wrapping up kind of their, if you will, the pitch about like why Amazon is still building new exciting things. Kind of that they ended on this project, was it Kuiper? And it really, which is basically, I would say it's very similar to Starlink. Basically, they're going to cover the US and low-level satellites. And that was kind of like a callback, because they kind of did it like in announcing it. They had this cool video with it, but they kind of showed like Amazon.com, Amazon Prime, Alexa, like kind of like their big bets. So they kind of position this as sort of like their next big bet, and kind of bringing, if you will, the internet to everyone around the world where it has not been available anywhere else. So that's sort of like, if you will, their aspirational message, right? Like, here's where we're going to go. Here's this next big thing that we're going to do. And that was sort of, that was kind of the big announcements were, but again, AI was the big thing. And I will say today's keynote by the vice president of AI went a little slower. And if you're just interested in going through that, that's probably the first 40 minutes of that one is probably a nice bite-sized chunk if you just want to know that, because that one is like over 2 hours as well. But the next 40 minutes, if you just want the AI stuff, watch the first 40 minutes of the AI keynote.
All right. Well, it's AI all the time. Well, this marks, I think, maybe the last major conference for the end of the year. I'm sure there's other ones. I don't mean to insult people, but there's several others coming up, which we can highlight in a little bit. But before we get to that, Brandon, is there any bureaucracy?
Couple things. I sent stickers to Dean in the UK. Also, Rob sent a nice pic of an SDT sticker on his laptop, so I always like to see that. Matt, I wanted to give you a chance. Matt, people want to know about your trackball. You mentioned it for last week. I've actually put in the link here, but why don't you tell the people what it is?
It's a Kensington expert trackball. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wired one, not the wireless. Wireless, I don't know. I've had some bad experiences with wireless, and I've given up on it. So, yeah,
it's just a big old Kensington. Too quick for Bluetooth.
Well, every time you mention the trackball, Matt, people ask about it. So either I'm way off, and like who's using trackballs, or we have a small community of people that also includes trackball users. So there you have it. And the link here, the link, if you want Matt's trackball, it's in the show notes.
Well, speaking, like I mentioned, the only conference we have to mention is coming up in January, and it's that conference on January 29th, which Brandon has been to, and we recorded an episode at 2 years ago, or was it last year? I don't
Thanks
know.
2 years. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. There was ferns and things like that, and way off in I think March. There's KubeCon EU coming up. There's a bunch of co-located events, and there's one on, I forget if it's platform engineering or internal developer platforms that I was asked to submit something to. So we'll see if that happens. That'd be fun to go to.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff circulating, running around there for you to check out conference wise. And with that, what do you have to recommend this episode, Brandon?
Well, I'm going to recommend another episode of the Acquired podcast, which of course I enjoy listening to. This is a pretty long one. It's the complete history and strategy of Visa. Visa being the, if you will, the network that processes many of the credit card transactions out there. So I learned a lot about the weird nuances of both how it came into being and how it's maybe the highest gross margin business in the world. So if you think about taking like a few cents from every credit card transaction and you just do that continuously, turns out you make a lot of money. So if you're interested in learning about how that came to be, check out the Acquired podcast.
Yeah, being a I guess as we would say nowadays, a middle person, always a good job. It's always enjoyable. So how about speaking of middle persons, how about yourself, Matt Ray, since you're in the middle recommendation here?
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one who loves Markdown, but I also enjoy Google Docs. Well, it turns out Google Docs has Markdown support. If you go into preferences, you can enable it, but there's also a plugin for Google Docs to Markdown. So you can actually do your work in Google Docs with collaborating and everything with whoever, and then in the platform that you're going to go publish whatever you've been sharing on in Markdown, like maybe your blog, you can export it. So that's kind of a nice plugin
All as
to have.
Markdown?
As
Amazing.
Markdown. Yes.
Huh. Maybe we could switch to using that instead of paper then, because that's really the only reason, aside from the usual enterprise reason of just like, well, it's what we use and we got other shit going on than modernization. But
yep, Google Docs, Markdown together at last.
Although, like any good enterprise manager, I don't actually do any work with that, so I'm going to suggest ways that we change it. I think is well, my recommendation, I don't always have a lot of Dutch food to recommend. I mean, if you like it, you like it. That's fine. But I've come up with a new finding that I'm going to test out further tomorrow, and that is Dutch style pork chops. Now you go to the grocery store, you go to an American grocery store, they got pork chops, but they cut them kind of differently here. I don't really know what the deal is, but they're always also very thinly cut. And I don't know if this is just me or the world in general, but I feel like pork chops get kind of like a bad rap. Like they're a cheap cut of meat. They're probably not healthy for you. And so like, I don't really eat them that often, but every time I buy a pack of pork chops and I cook it, I'm like, this is really good. And the thing, I'm no food scientist, but the thing about pork, I don't want to say that you want to undercook it, but you don't want to overcook it, right? Like definitely don't overcook the pork. You want it to be nice and juicy and it's super enjoyable. So, check out pork chops. That's my recommendation. Thinly sliced. I think maybe if you get a thick sliced one, you want to do the reverse sear method on or whatever. But, I cooked one up for lunch today. It took about 3 minutes on each side or so. It was good stuff. Well, hopefully you've been listening to this during your delicious lunch, perhaps enjoying some pork chops or vegan pork chops, if that exists. I'm not really sure what they put in for the bone. I mean, that's part of the pleasure of a pork chop is you get that little bone and you can just kind of like work at it, get the little bits of meat. And then that weird thing in that little nook, that little notch at the top of the pork chops, that's also pleasurable. And, this has been Software Defined Talk. If you want to get the show notes, which includes links to things we talked about and all the stuff we didn't, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/443. And you can also see how to join our Slack channel where there's all sorts of conversation. Usually there's not 5,000 messages in a 24-hour period that you can scroll through. And you should check that out. And also, if you listen this far, you should subscribe to my newsletter, which is at newsletter.cote.io. Is that right? Type that in and see if it goes in. And if not, email me, and I'll go over to some AI thing and say, configure my newsletter domain for me. And then you'll probably end up going to hitler.cote.io, which is not my intention. I want you to go to newsletter.
Why? Well, you should have registered that domain.
Yeah, now it's gonna train on transcripts of our podcast, and every time someone's like, configure Cote's load balancer, it's gonna be like, statistically, the next thing is the following, and then I'm gonna be screwed.
Cote.
Yeah, don't go to newsletter.cote.io. Just not the other one. I don't agree with that. All right, bye.
Bye. I don't agree with that. Why did you set up that subdomain?
It is news. I did check it though. It is newsletter.cote.io.
Thank you.
So,
yes.
all right, Matt. Well, listen, I think I could hear. I want a quick poll of the people still on here. I could actually hear, Matt, when you're typing. It's loud enough. So did other people in the show?
Yeah.
I don't know. In the chat, could you hear Matt typing, especially at the end during the recommendations? Did anyone else hear that, or is that just the thing?
I think I heard some things.
All right.
There.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
People like, you think it's not? I mean, this is just you typing.
No. I know it's louder. I know it's louder than my previous keyboard. It's
I think it's great. It adds.
It's not one of those like crazy clicky ones.
Oh no. Okay, hold on. Okay, here we are. So let me know if you guys can hear this. Let's see here. Let's play the official. Well, that's not.
Well, I literally had the microphone like 3 inches from the keyboard when I recorded that.
Well, Matt, that's what I asked you to. So you did a good
I
job.
know.
Can you hear it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the trackball, right?
That's the scroll wheel on the side of the trackball.
Right there. So what were you typing, Matt? Is that an actual real words? Or is that actually it seems like you're typing quite fast.
I think I might have been typing. I'm typing some bullshit for the recording.
Really? You typed that?
Yes.
All right. Well, I think it sounds quite loud. I think this keyboard is quite loud. I don't know. Let's again, as a show of in the chat, let me know if you believe that is silent, reasonable sound, or loud. So let's just see if other people say. I don't know, Cote. You said you had an opinion. What was your opinion on the sound?
I always like background noise in podcasts I'm listening to. It adds some reality. Now what most people probably didn't hear is the sound that Matt Ray's daughter makes when she leaves the house for school, which sounds very close to like if you would imagine like a fine dining
China cabinet being thrown on the ground.
And then right before she leaves, she just like takes it and throws it onto the ground.
It did feel like there was a little wall was shaking. So all right. Well, I think people, I guess in here, I think people are saying that like it's a reasonably sounding, Matt. So there you go. I guess
I think it's great. It's good background.
I'm using the Apple keyboard, which I guess is somewhat
super silent. Yeah.
It's just pretty quiet. So there you have it.
I'm just typing with my mind.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for everyone who joined us on the chat this week. That was fun. And all of you, I know I see some of you joined us on the Slack for the AWS keynote. So it is very fun to watch a keynote with others, even if they're in Slack. It keeps me engaged in the keynote, if you will. I have a hard time sitting there for 2.5 hours by myself. So that was so that's good. And that way, when Cote and Matt get up, they look at the Slack and there's like 400 messages that they're never covered. So that was good. So all right, and then we will be hopefully streaming this day around this time at least 3 more times before the end of the year. So definitely check back if you will. And I will somehow, maybe next time, I'll find a way to get into the Twitch before I start the show so I can delete the spam. So I don't know. I need to figure that out. So
that one was so polite. It's like, oh, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to, try to get you.
This is stuck. It just annoyed me. So all right, streamers. We'll talk to you next time.